food isn't like a discretionary fungible expense for people. So like what's changed other than sort of the state of the country and political polling to get you to this point?
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. As expected, Justin Trudeau's grocery tax announcement caused quite the reaction in the media. However, I don't think it was the reaction that they planned to get, mainly because it's obvious that the Liberals haven't had an actual plan for the past 8 years.
That was especially obvious of who they sent out to address it. Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry of Canada, Philippe Champagne. But before we get to that, help us keep this channel growing strong by hitting that like button to help push this out to more viewers, and subscribe to the channel so you're notified about our next episode. If you would like to support the channel, please check out the description for more details. Now let's get into it.
So the government wasn't just focused on housing. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his government are also taking aim at grocery giants here in Canada. The Prime Minister is calling on the leadership of the largest grocery chains to create plans by Thanksgiving on how to stabilize food prices.
Our plan doesn't provide real relief for the middle class and people working hard to join it, then we will take further action, and we are not ruling anything out, including tax measures.
Industry Minister Philippe Champagne is spearheading those discussions, and he joins me now from London. Minister, thanks for coming back this week. We appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, David. A big day for Canadians.
Well, you heard there the Prime Minister talking about big consequences for grocery giants that fail to provide relief to Canadians that could include tax measures. What kind of tax measures are we talking about here? Tax on profits, windfall taxes? What's the plan?
Listen, I would say, David, there'll be consequences. You know, the point that we've been saying is that kind of enough is enough. We need to have, meaningful action that would reduce price inflation in Canada in the grocery sector. I mean, we've heard from Canadians that one of the biggest, if not the biggest concern is obviously cost of living and the price of food. And we've seen record profits. We've seen doubling, I would say, of the profit margins in the grocery sector. And we need to, the reason why I told them, I said, come to Ottawa. We'll be in solution mode. We'll be looking at things that we can do together. We've seen that some international practices. I've looked at what's going on in France, for example, in other jurisdictions. The point is that what we need is meaningful action that would tackle price inflation, which has been skyrocketing in Canada, that we need to tackle together.
Okay. So one thing, it's very hard to listen to Philippe because he just sounds like a robot. But two, there's a couple of key things that he said in there. Number one, yesterday, Justin Trudeau made it sound like that they were going to try to get the grocery chains to bring down the cost of food. That's not what Philippe said. What Philippe said was that they wanted the grocery chains to bring down the inflation of food, to control the inflation. So that's not bringing down the cost of food. That's just controlling the rate at which it goes up. And he said a couple of other things there. We're concerned about the profits of the grocery stores. Well, we already destroyed that myth yesterday.
Yeah, he claimed that they doubled. They haven't doubled. We showed you the math yesterday.
Yeah. So the profits of the grocery stores have increased only as much as inflation has increased. So the margin has stayed the same. Okay? So that is put to bed. All of the profits that the grocery chains are making, including Sobeys, which Jagmeet was talking about today, is all due to the pharmaceutical and the cosmetic section. Okay? So that's it. So this narrative is just put to bed. And I also find it interesting that he seems to be walking back the whole consequences thing. Like, that was the main point that Trudeau made yesterday, and now they don't even want to address it.
Yeah, it seemed like either Trudeau just threw it out there out of left field and completely blindsided the MPs and the cabinet ministers, and they had no idea what he was talking about, and he had to kind of make up something on the fly, or that Philippe Champagne does not know what these consequences are.
Or that they received some sort of intel today that caused such a stir in the media and in the public that was probably a bad idea to announce.
Well, how can you tax a grocery store? And this is what the reporter was trying to get at. How can you tax a grocery store on profits without that going down to the consumer?
You can't.
It doesn't make sense.
You cannot. You cannot tax any business without them passing that cost down to the customer. So in actual fact, it doesn't hurt the business at all. It just hurts the customer. But
in magical Trudeau land, somehow taxes equal more money? I don't know.
Well, he's only been given an allowance his whole life, so he doesn't know. And currently his allowance is the Canadian taxpayer.
Okay, I understand what you're trying to get the grocery companies to do, but what is it you're threatening, I guess, for lack of a better word, to do if they don't follow suit? Like, what are the tax measures the Prime Minister and the Cabinet and the caucus are talking about in that announcement today? Can you be specific?
What's going on here, CBC? This guy's not letting up on his question. I like it.
Yeah, he's not just bending over for the Liberal narrative. Interesting.
Yeah, what are the taxes? You didn't answer the question. What are you talking about?
I would say there'll be consequences, David. I don't want to go there first because you know what I'm saying to CEOs of the grocery chain, it's not about us. It's about millions of their customers which want to see meaningful action. So they need to respond to them because they're saying, we want meaningful action to reduce price inflation in the grocery sector. So I'll be sitting with them. My point, and the Prime Minister was pretty clear, if they don't want to come to the table with meaningful solution, there'll be consequences. But I think we don't need to get there because I believe and I have all faith that they'll come to the table with solution because they're not just talking to me and the Prime Minister in Cabinet and caucus. They're talking to millions of customers which are watching tonight and also want to see meaningful action. So I think that we'll be together next week.
Right.
We'll tackle that together like we've done in other sectors with the telcos, and I'm sure we can find solutions that will help Canadians.
Solutions that will help Canadians, that involves getting rid of those carbon taxes. The one thing you guys refuse to do.
I just love that he's taking this position of, well, I don't want to talk about consequences. This isn't about that. Well, you made it about that. Trudeau made it about that yesterday.
Yeah, I honestly think that they have no idea what they're talking about, like usual.
And I think that they probably got such blowback today in terms of the impact that that's going to have. And someone probably whispered in their ear, hey guys, that's actually going to make food costs higher, not lower. And then they said, oh shit. Well, we can't walk that back. Let's just say don't worry about it and we'll focus on problem solving. I bet you that is exactly what happened.
Okay, I was asking for specifics because Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked specifically about this last year, about taxing the profits of grocery giants. And this is what he said to our chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton. Just have a listen to this.
What about grocery stores, though, that continue to make a profit at a time when, for a lot of Canadians, that doesn't seem right?
The last thing we want to do is put on a tax that people then just pass along to the consumers. So we have to be careful about what we're doing. We're studying. I know there's been a lot of studies on what's happening with food prices, and we're looking at trying to help people. That's what we've tried to do every step of the way. But I don't think that the simplistic solution, as satisfying as it might sound, is necessarily the right approach.
So, Minister, help me understand it there. The Prime Minister worried a year ago that if you tax the grocery stores, they're just going to pass it on to consumers, and calling calls for a windfall tax to deal with high prices as simplistic. What's changed between then and now?
Wow.
Did you see Philippe Champagne's face as soon as the reporter said, oh, well, we have this clip from Justin Trudeau from last year? Like, he knew he was boned.
Yeah, this was quite the play by the CBC reporter. That's almost entrapping Philippe Champagne into a no-win scenario, because last year the Prime Minister is saying, oh, we can't tax the grocery chains. They're just going to pass that cost on. And yet he's out yesterday doing a complete 180, threatening that. And so there's no answer that is going to make sense that Philippe can actually come back with.
It's because Justin Trudeau just says whatever he thinks is going to get votes. Like, it doesn't have to be practical. It doesn't have to be possible. He just says whatever he thinks will get him out of the doghouse.
Right. And with the least amount of work. It's like when he was making all of his rosy campaign promises from 2015 to 2019 to 2021 about how he's going to fix housing.
A Liberal government will prioritize significant new investment in affordable housing. For too long, a first home has been out of reach for far too many. It's time to change that. I'll be blunt as well. Housing isn't a primary federal responsibility.
Here he is talking over almost a year ago. Well, we got to deal with the price of food. Haven't done shit this whole year. And then Pierre's out there on the campaign trail over the summer, murdering them to the tune of a 92 seat over a, I think, 82 seat projection for the Conservatives over the Liberals in the latest Abacus poll. So he is very concerned. I think his caucus is really pissed at him. So he's trying to make it look like they're doing something. And the problem is they're actually creating this perception that is 10 times worse. Because 2 weeks ago, actually 3 weeks ago now, they had their retreat, this big expensive retreat, talk about climate change. You flew everybody in to PEI. So you have everybody there all week. You bring in some alleged experts on housing. They threw all these ideas at you. You announce nothing. And now you're implementing solutions on housing, solutions, quote unquote, that you've been trying to enact for over a year, which is just throwing money at it. And now your solution to food prices is make the grocery stores figure it out, or else. But now you're walking back, or else.
Well, and again, they're doing this whole boogeyman thing where the CEOs of the grocery stores, they're the boogeymen now. It used to be COVID was the boogeyman, and then it was climate change, and now it's these guys.
Well, I think this situation, I think you're saying, the price inflation of food has been skyrocketing. I mean, it's way above normal inflation you see in the country. So it requires us to take decisive action. What the Prime Minister said today, and in line with what he said at the time, what we're saying to them, there'll be consequences if they don't want to come with meaningful solution. But you know what, David, I have faith that they will come to the table with solutions because, like I said, you don't necessarily need to go to the consequences. They'll have to justify that to millions of customers across Canada who now understand that, we're going to be fighting for them because that's our role. My role is to fight for public interest and Canadians. That's what I'm doing. That's what the Prime Minister is doing. We said, come to the table. We'll look at solution. We understand that the Canadian market has its own dynamic, but at the end of the day, we need to see meaningful action that would reduce price inflation in Canada in the food sector.
No. No. You can't say yesterday that there's all these greedy CEOs of the grocery chains and we don't trust them, so we're tired of it and they have to go and figure this out. And now today we're like, no, we're very confident that they're going to come to the table. No, sorry, that doesn't wash. That doesn't wash. You can't call them essentially greedy and untrustworthy one day, and then because you got all this blowback because of what the Prime Minister said, the next day you're like, they're our best friends and they're going to come and we're going to find a solution. We have faith in that, so we're not even going to worry about the consequences.
Well, and I love how he said that, it's inflation on groceries that's still up. Everything else is, slowing down, but it's inflation on groceries that's still up. Gee, I wonder what could be causing that. Do you know, Cypher?
Yeah, what continues to go up with every passing month and every passing quarter? Could it be, let's see, the carbon tax? Maybe it's the carbon tax.
I think you're onto something.
Because that carbon tax is at every step of the supply chain. So it's cumulative. Everyone raises their prices, so then everyone else has to raise their prices. It's a cumulative effect. And yeah, the more carbon tax he adds, because he added another one in January or in July, the more that's going to skyrocket food. Like, what do you expect? This is not hard. You don't need to be a chartered accountant to understand what's going on here.
You don't need a degree in economics like Stephen Harper to know that
budgets don't balance themselves.
Exactly.
And I think Canadians expect that, and they'll have to answer to me, the Prime Minister, but I would say millions of their customers which are watching tonight.
Right, but millions of customers have been watching this for well over a year. When the Prime Minister was asked about that.
Look at the look on Champagne's face. He's like, these answers are not working.
That reporter is savage.
Yeah, he's like not letting him get away, and he looks stunned right now. Look at Champagne's face.
CBC, you guys are supposed to be doing this to me.
You're on our payroll. 70% of your funding comes from us. Where's our privilege? I guess this guy missed the memo, eh, Philippe?
Prices have been high for a long period of time, and you're making a similar argument as when we spoke about the wireless issues in Toronto earlier this week, but food isn't like a discretionary fungible expense for people. So like, what's changed other than sort of the state of the country and political polling to get you to this point?
Boom.
Oh,
Boom.
beautiful.
There you go.
Man, I gotta buy that reporter a drink.
Well, let's just hope he continues this. And you know what? I don't mind if he talks to Pierre and the Conservatives like this, as long as he continues to talk to the Liberals like this. Because this is the way journalists are supposed to talk to all politicians. There's not supposed to be favoritism. They're supposed to be challenging them.
And before you guys say anything, we're not journalists.
No, we're not journalists. So, but if Pierre starts doing stupid stuff, we will be challenging him as well. Don't worry.
Oh, I would say it's always a good time to fight for Canadians and to fight for lower prices.
It's always a good time to fight for Canadians, fight for lower prices. This seems to be Philippe's new tagline, because he said this yesterday as well. Let me just amend it. It's always a good time to fight for Canadians as long as we're down in the polls.
Yeah, when we're up in the polls and we've got the votes, we're going to do whatever we want. We don't care. Screw you all.
Which is why we haven't done anything for the last 3 years.
It's always a good time. And therefore, we see the situation. We've looked at the numbers. We already took, the grocery rebate, we took action before. But now when we look at the numbers, we're saying kind of enough is enough. And we need to work with them. That's why we said to them, you have to come to Ottawa next week. We have to find meaningful solutions so that Canadians can see that we stabilize prices and we don't see kind of the level of inflation that we've seen in the grocery sector over the last quarters. So I think what we're saying is fairly reasonable. Canadians would expect that. Like I said, we've seen that in other jurisdictions, and we're going to be doing a Canadian solution. And I expect them to work with us because, like I said, millions of their customers expect that.
Did you catch that?
Oh,
Over
yeah.
the last quarter.
Oh, yeah. And
What happened in this last quarter, Cypher?
Yeah, what happened over the last quarter? What happened in July, everybody? Carbon tax 2. That's what happened in July. Nobody should be surprised by this, but, the Liberals are making, the shocked Pikachu face again.
But don't worry, everybody. You're going to get back more money than you're giving for this carbon tax.
This, Pierre and the Conservatives, they must be sitting back laughing. They're going to be like, damn, we don't even have to do anything anymore. They're setting themselves on fire at this point.
So what does the Canadian solution look like? Can you quantify what relief would look like for people? Because the grocery chains have already put out a statement, and you saw them when they testified at committee in March, that they say their prices and profits aren't the problem. It's supply chain issues. It's the war in Ukraine. So what does a measure of relief
Well, let's
look
talk
like?
about that. Let's look at that. If it's supply chain, I'm happy to work with them on that. That's what being in solution mode.
I love that he's acting surprised. Like the first time he's hearing that it's the supply chain issue is from the CBC reporter. Never mind the fact that Galen West and the other CEOs were in Parliament in March when Jagmeet was hosting his clown show. So you knew back then when they were telling you that it was supply chain issues, and there's not really much that they can do. Don't act like this is the first time you're hearing this, Philippe. You didn't do anything last year. When you called these guys in, and they didn't have to come in, it was a courtesy that they actually came in to talk to you in March. They told you what the problem was. Why weren't you in solution mode then? Oh, wait. Because the Conservatives weren't murdering you in the polls.
Well, and it was a kangaroo court. They didn't care what the executives had to say. They just wanted to show off to Canadians that, look, we're hauling these guys in to make them explain themselves. I mean, if you look at the committee videos from that time, Jagmeet has a stack of papers that's just, it's got to be like, I don't know, probably a foot high. And
Yeah.
it's all these questions and concerns from his constituents because he's the man and he's going to save all Canadians. And it was a complete gong show.
Yeah, it was a prop because he actually didn't touch it once. Canadians see right through this, Philippe, and you guys know it, and you're talking like you're all panicking to hell.
The Canadian way is to say, hey, come on board. We'll be looking at solution. We'll work together for the benefit of millions of customers of yours that are also watching tonight.
Yeah, yeah, the Canadian way, right? So the Canadian way apparently is, yeah, come on board, let's work together, or there'll be consequences.
Yeah, like you threaten them first, and then you're like, oh, well, we would like to work together.
This is so transparent, and it is so terrible. But you know what? The Conservatives are just saying, please keep sending out Philippe and Chrystia Freeland. Please.